guys? Aquanair back with another video, and it is finally time to correct what is, in my opinion, my worst video I have ever put up on this channel. It is literally, I had to wait a year to correct it, but we are finally here at the end of 2023 to give a list of the top 10 rappers in New York right now. So, for a little bit of context, I did this a year ago, talking about who I thought were the top 10 best rappers in New York. And needless to say, there were a lot of issues with that list. Number one, I really didn't have a hardcore set of rules defined. Number two, I didn't do my proper due diligence into researching everybody. And that manifested in one, me overlooking certain artists, as well as two, me including artists that weren't even from like New York like that. And so yeah, I was really like looking back, even when I like dropped it, I really wasn't happy with the list, and am excited now to bring y'all an updated list. But on top of it being updated just because my criteria has changed, a lot of people's slots have changed. A lot of people have risen. A lot of people have fallen. And so, yeah, I think the top five most likely didn't get too shaken up this year. But that 6 through 10 position, all of that is completely changed up. Everything about that is totally different now. So yeah. So the way this is gonna work is that every single artist, I'm a channel, of course. I cover all kinds of rap and rappers, but for this series, I want to specifically focus on artists who started, who are in this decade, whose artistic journey starts in this decade. So the furthest I will go back in terms of when artists made their first album will be 2015. If your album was in 2014, 2013, you, in my opinion, are a 2010s artist, and that is where your decade, that is where your sort of career lies. But at 2015 and after, I will consider you for this decade. On top of that, I have three general criteria for how I judge this. So to make it a little bit objective, it's not just my own personal, who do I like the most. The first one being discog. This is kind of the most objective one. How many albums do you have and how good are they, right? And how consistent are you with dropping great, amazing, bad, perfect works? The next one is output. And this is a little bit more subjective, but not as much. Mainly just what do you do outside of your specific album output that puts you out there as a New York artist. So that includes things such as hit songs, deluxe albums, freestyles, and things like that, features as well, right? Things outside of your album that you do to really make you sort of an artist who is generally a part of the New York scene rather than just sort of sitting in your corner making your albums. I do think, and I think that it's important to recognize artists who are outside really doing their thing with the output. And number three is impact / originality. And I want to make it clear that for this, there's two ways to get high on this scale. Number one is you can be very impactful on the current sound of New York. The other way is for you to be very unique, have a sound that is completely different from all that we've heard from New York so far, and that is really different. So with that being said, let's get into quickly rattling off some honorable mentions. We got 22Gz, who really just kind of suffers from missing in action. I understand he's got a rollout finally happening. Now we've seen more output from him. The year off that he took, as well as the rising competition, has caused him to lose his spot. Other honorable mentions include Coi Leray, who has a solid album with Coi, but Trendsetter was really bad, and overall, she still has a decent way to go artistically to really reach this upper echelon. Cardi B also, and Cardi B goes into another rule, that is that you do need an album. You need an album to be on this list. I would put Cardi B on this list. if it wasn't for the fact that she doesn't have an album out right now. And the last honorable mention that I'll mention here is someone who honestly was like, if there was like an 11th position or a 12th position, she would be in this position. But it's just gotten so competitive this year with all the new talent cropping up, as well as the amount of music that I've been able to pay attention to, that she just wasn't quite able to make the cut. And that would be Lola Brooke. Really solid album, great freestyles, but just, barely missed out, in my personal opinion, on that top spot. But yeah, let's get into it. Now, I know it says top 10 in the title, but I am going to have to reserve this number 10 spot for two different people who I really tried to choose one, but it's a bit difficult because they're very different artists, and so directly comparing them is nigh impossible. Their strengths and weaknesses are very different, as you will see. But first up, so for the number 10 position, but 10 and 11, whatever order it is you want to put them in, I got Zillakami and Ice Spice. And so the thing is with this is that Zillakami, if you don't know, is a trap metal artist from upstate New York who really got on with the SoundCloud wave and makes really good rock rap or metal rap fusion music. Super unique and super interesting artist. Really love his music. I've talked about him a couple times on the channel. His writing and artistic ability is really, really incredible. And it would have been very easy for me to put him at number 10. Unfortunately, his last album wasn't that crazy, as well as the fact that there's not really much in the way of output. There's a couple features he has here and there, but there's not much he has in the way of freestyles and deluxe albums, and he feels kind of separated from the overall New York rap scene. And so for that, I had to dock some points on him. Conversely, Ice Spice pretty much has the opposite problem, honestly, with hit after hit after hit, freestyles on the books, features, and just a general large mainstream presence. Her output is nothing to be questioned, but at this point, her career is really just starting. She only has an EP, which is just okay, and she still has a lot to prove artistically. And so for that reason, I'm going to put both of them next to each other in the number 10 position. Both of them really solid artists, and I'm really interested to see how they grow and improve throughout this decade. But for now, I would say that both of them are in that number 10 position, Zillakami and Ice Spice. Number 9, I'm going to go ahead and put Rowdy Rebel. And this is an interesting one for me. Just because Rowdy Rebel is such an impactful figure. He pretty much was part of the creation of drill music, the early phases of it at least, along with Bobby Shmurda. And he's had a decent amount of output, dropping freestyles earlier in the year, having some deluxe albums and stuff like that. But his output, number one, isn't too crazy, not too many hits and stuff like that. On top of that, his last project, Splash Brothers, was pretty underwhelming overall, and I definitely feel like I want to see more from him from an album perspective, so I can like put him higher. But I will say that I think that he is a great artist, super unique voice, and I'm so glad that he's been able to really find a stride in hip hop after his super long prison sentence. So that's Rowdy Rebel. Number 8, and this is really, this is really where we get interesting. So number 8, I gotta go with Lil TJ, someone who, if you asked me a year ago, I didn't think would be able to make this list. But he dropped an amazing record this year, which really catapulted him a lot. On top of having a solid rollout, he has really put a lot of artists on in a way that I haven't really. It took me a second to see it, but you know, he was the only feature on Ice Spice's like album. He's put on a lot of people from the Bronx in general, and so while in my opinion sonically he hasn't really pushed the needle all that much, what I will say is that he has done a lot for his community of the Bronx and making sure that they get their shine, and that's really awesome to see. And yeah, that being said, his prior work, such as the 2021 album Destined to Win, does count against him a little bit, as well as the fact that I do want a little bit more from him from a versatility perspective, and from an artistic growth perspective to make it to that top five. I'm so happy for TJ, and I feel like this has been a really great year for him. And I personally consider him as the 8th best rapper in New York so far. Number 7, I gotta go with Lil Tecca. And this guy, like, if you remember a video I made earlier in the year, I put Tecca, I replaced Coast Contra with Lil Tecca and put Lil Tecca at number 9. And this is something where I just lacked the research. At the time, the perception of Virgo World was really low. And so I kind of went with the perception of the album rather than my actual thoughts of the album. But going and actually really listening to Virgo World, it's a really solid project, and you know, makes me look at Tecca's, particularly his 2020 discography, because I'm not counting his first record because that was 2019. It makes me look at his discography in a far more favorable light, given it was Virgo World, then We Love You Tecca 2, which was great, and now this latest record, Tech. Um, I really see the growth in his discography, but also the consistency in his discography. There's no misses, there's no nothing. He has a solid amount of hits with Did It Again, Somebody, what's it called, 500 Pounds as of, you know, most recently, Repeated, Never Left. He's really been doing his thing, even has a couple of features out there. And so Lil Tecca, number 7, super happy for him. I really feel like he's killing it. Number 6, and this might be a little bit inflated, a little bit of bias, but I really do believe in this artist, and I think that it definitely helps when you have amazing records under your belt. And so for that reason, I'm going to put number 6 as Lady London. And honestly, it's a bit strange because, like, really all she needed was an album, but she kind of had the rest of it kind of filled out already. While her impact isn't crazy yet, she hasn't really pushed the needle sonically in any significant way. I do feel like her more bar-heavy approach to rap is unique to her, and she has her own unique sound and pocket. On top of the fact that, from an output perspective, she's really impressive. All the freestyle she's had, that dope feature she had with the girls, and even that mixtape that she had, which I'm kind of debating between whether I count that with, you know, a Discog or Impact, because it is technically a mixtape and it's on other people's beats. But either way, it was an incredible mixtape and I really enjoyed it. The collab tape, while not, you know, wasn't crazy about it, my issues with that collab tape were more the other person, and I thought Lady London actually did a really good job kind of with her presence on it. And so yeah, Lady London, and obviously I've talked about Soul ad nauseum. If you haven't seen me talk about Soul, go watch my other videos. Soul is an amazing project. So yeah, I would consider Lady London as a very complete artist from this current criteria that I have of impact and output and discography. And so for that reason, I'm going to put her at number 6. I will say this is where, you know, the difference between like the best artist and the greatest artist, right? I think that from like a greatness and a current perspective, I can't put her as high, despite the fact that I think that artistically she's stronger than a lot of artists who I would put in the top 5. Starting off at number 5, and honestly, not much has changed from last year. We have Don Q, who left us in a great place in 2022 with his album Corleone. I thought that was really impressive. I got to listen to his 2021 record, and that was also really, really good. So definitely boosting in the discography points. Output, of course he's got some Funk Select stuff, but also he dropped an incredible On the Radar freestyle, which was like really one of my most listened to this year. I really enjoyed what he had to offer with that. So definitely get some points from an output perspective. Impact, he hasn't had the opportunity to really have a big impact because from a sonic shifting perspective, because he's not he doesn't have that mainstream, appeal that would change the fabric of everything. But similar to the other artists I've talked about on this list, he has carved his own sound, and I really do think that that is something to be commended, with the lyricism over the trap beats, and he is sort of building up this. He is putting on for Highbridge, the label, and sort of slowly, all three of them, A Boogie, Don Q, and Trap Manny, are solidifying one of the strongest groups in the new age of New York music. So Don Q, one of the best lyricists of this current decade, and really excited to see what his next album is going to be. So yeah, that's Don Q. Number 4, and I'm still gonna keep it's really close. It's really close between number 3 and number 4. I'm gonna have to go with Sleepy Hollow for now. Chef G is in prison right now, so like it doesn't really feel fair to like have his discography count, because the quality isn't where it needs to be, but mostly because he's in prison. But Sleepy Hollow's been putting on for the Winner's Circle, and with his last project, he absolutely got a boost and has just been really incredible. His On the Radar freestyle, for the sake of output, has been awesome. And this is the first, well, second, but this is another artist who has a really high impact when it comes to bringing samples into drill. That was one of his big, things that he did. And basically, like, to me, he is responsible for all of the Bronx drill that we would get later on, as well as, like, just being one of the first drill. I call it the big four of Pop Smoke, Chef G, what is it? Pop Smoke, Winner's Circle, Favi. Wait, what? Is it 5? No, it's the big 6. My bad. Chef, Sleepy, Favi, Pop, 22Gs, and I can't remember, there's somebody else. But those 5, I feel like really started the drill wave and people rapping on drill beats, right? So yeah, absolutely, high impact. All that. Number 5 goes to Sleepy Hollow, and number 3, and he is kind of down a position. Last time he was kind of vying for that second place, whatever. But now I kind of have to definitively put him at number 3. That being Fabio Foreign. Now, the interesting thing about this is that his discography actually has gotten better. Or at least I think that he stayed consistent. His writing, which was one of the main pain points from the Bible for me, did improve on Without Warning, and I thought it was a solid project. However, I think from an output perspective, he feels a lot less present, honestly. I don't see him on as many features as I used to. He's not really had any main hits this year. None of his singles have sort of taken off. Obviously, he hasn't had any form of deluxe albums or freestyles either. And so the main thing with Favi was that he was super up there on the output scale, being everywhere with all the freestyles and stuff like that. And while I don't, for me, like when it comes to like older stuff, it's like I want to incorporate the rest of the decade with a bias on the current year, right? So I still don't, I don't think it's fair that we lose the rest of what Favi has done for the rest of the decade because this year he wasn't going crazy. But I do think that given that, like I said, not really many hits, not as many features, and not as many freestyles this year specifically, definitely knocks him down a peg. That being said, the number 2's position also kind of took a dip this year, in my opinion. That being the rap crew of Griselda. And now when we talk about Griselda, there's a lot of different people to talk about. And I think that what's interesting is that they've kind of all been on dips for different reasons. Benny the Butcher, we just haven't really heard from. He didn't really take a dip, in my opinion. We just haven't heard from him. Tana Talk 4 was fire, and I did get the chance to listen to his prior work to find out that he actually really is an incredible rapper. That's kind of the reason why. That's kind of what gave them the edge. Was the prior when I looked at the prior work of Griselda, I really was introduced to like their consistency with these excellent albums. But we haven't heard from him this year. I'm really excited to see what he comes out with in 2024. I got a video about all that stuff coming out soon. I think y'all will like that. Um, and there's that. West Side Gun hasn't. West Side Gun was the only person, to my opinion, drop an overtly bad album this year, so he kind of lowered his stocks. With in the sense that I just think that "And That You Pray for Me" is just a significant downgrade from his prior work. And then Conway the Machine is a bit of an interesting place with his career. I feel like his strategy has just been to flood the market with as much music as humanly possible. And while it's an interesting strategy for the sake of gaining streams and trying different sounds and things of that nature and building a discography, I think at this point, his verses have become so oversaturated that it's really kind of hard to see him in such the high regarded light that we used to see him as. On top of the fact that, his albums to me have gone from like albums that are like always consistently amazing to albums that are like good or great. And it's also harder for him to make another amazing album because we've heard so much from him already. And so overall, I just feel like he's like, sort of the opposite problem of Benny the Butcher. He's just giving us too much of the same content and it's just getting exhausting. And so overall, to me, Griselda has been on a bit of a downturn this year, but still shout out to them for putting out great music throughout the year. And it's not like they're bad. It's just, compared to where I have them before, where I ranked them before, they've just, gone down a little bit.
To be clear, I didn't forget about Stove God Cooks, but similar to Benny the Butcher, it's just been so long since he's dropped, and we really do need to hear something from him, although of course, the feature from Kitchen Lights was definitely appreciated.
And finally, y'all know what it is. Same as last year. The best artist or the greatest artist in New York right now, I'm going to have to say is A Boogie with the Hoodie. And A Boogie with the Hoodie is, to me, pretty much the only person in the top 5 who has significantly, Sleepy Hollow as well. Although Sleepy Hollow was always good with his album, so it wasn't a crazy influence or a crazy increase. But, amongst the top 3, he's the only person who has really grown. This Before BOA track, oh my God, it was so good. Definitely helps with his discography a lot. Also, for me versus myself is definitely aging really, really gracefully. And I have it definitely in my rotation. He had that feature on the Spider-Verse, Calling for You, that was fire. And overall, A Boogie just can't seem to miss right now. And while it'd be nice to see him drop more hit songs or to see his music get more traction, from an artistic standpoint, A Boogie to me is at the top of the food chain, and no one is really touching him right now. And of course, from an impact perspective, he cannot be questioned. Literally brought New York melodies in rap to New York, and birthed the whole subgenre of people that I feel like were heavily inspired by him. But yeah, that's, I think, the current state of New York music right now. In my opinion, the most important and major new artists, as well as why I feel like they are where they're at right now. I hope you all really enjoyed this video. I feel a lot better about this one than I do about the last one. I feel more researched and more educated for this one, and I really hope you all like these kinds of ranking videos, these more high effort criteria type videos. Let me know what y'all thought in the comment section below. And with that being said, peace, y'all.